Hey everyone, it's Michael. I hope you're doing well today, and I have a video here to talk about another video and a line in there that I thought was something I hadn't really thought about to the phrasing of what my title is until this person said that. I was watching Serial at Midnight on YouTube. He's a physical media guy, but mainly more of a movie fan than anything. His name is Heath, and I recommend his channel to an extent. But anyway, I don't always agree with Heath. But he just did a review, I think it was on Thursday, but I saw it on Friday at work, listened to it at work, of him talking about the Fantastic Four First Steps movie. Now, I don't know anything about the movie, haven't been into it to see it yet, but he mentioned a point that movie had such a reverence for comic books, and for the Fantastic Four, apparently. Now, again, Heath is a big comic book guy, too. So I kind of trust him on this, I really do. His knowledge of the history of a lot of things, whether it be movie, TV, pulp, whatever, comics, even gaming to an extent. I trust his opinion when it comes to certain things. Not all things, but some things. And I think personally, as a comic fan, and somebody who grew up a comic fan of at least the characters, because I didn't get into comics until I was way older, I gotta tell you, I think Heath is onto something like that. Most comic book movies, and that includes DC and Marvel, the MCU stuff, all of it, most of these things to this day do not have any reverence for the comics. They don't have enough appreciation for the comics that the movies that they're making, especially these little offshoot movies like, Captain Marvel has been around in different forms for many, many, many years, decades even. But the movies they made of her, the TV shows of like Miss Marvel, for example, all of these things should be grateful for where they came from in hindsight. And even going back as far as like the 89 Tim Burton Batman movie. I think it's a great movie. I love it. But it doesn't always appreciate Batman in his form that he was in by the 80s. I love Michael Keaton as Batman. I don't think he's the greatest casting choice they could have made at that time. You even look at like Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. I love Joel Schumacher. And actually, I like both of those movies because I grew up with them. They were made to sell toys to kids, just kind of like the Adam West Show did to an extent. So it works for me at the time that I was born and seeing those movies and stuff. But my point is, then you have some movies that will be in a series that used to revere the comics and then don't all of a sudden. Great example, Spider-Man 3. Spider-Man 3 was, in hindsight, it's definitely not as bad as it used to be. But when it came out, I wanted to see it so bad because of the symbiote costume I had just started seeing from DVDs of the animated series from the 90s. And I loved that suit. I think in Spider-Man 3, the black costume looks freaking awesome. I love it. Despite the movie being a mess. And it's a weird mess, too, with too much jammed into it, but at the same time, it's all sloppily done, not because there's too much there, but because of the execution of those things. Now, a little bit of that is Sam Raimi trying to fuck with the studio because the studio tried to fuck with him first. But the point is, they both tried to fuck with each other, and it fucked the whole project up. And it killed the trilogy, Spider-Man 3, to this day, has a rough reputation, right? But then you look at, like, the Iron Man movies, right? And I think this is a great example of one that can be very, very divisive. When it comes to the filmmaking of those three movies, it's well done. I would say the first Iron Man film, obviously it's the one that kicked off the MCU. It is a big deal. It was phenomenal. It's still timeless, in my opinion. I watch it literally all the time. Iron Man 2, however, is the one that everybody debates on all the time, whether it's an actually good movie or not. I like Iron Man 2. It's not what I think it should be. It's a little messy, a little slow at certain points, but I don't mind that. It's not the slowest thing ever, even in those times of the movie. But it still, to me, has a reverence for Tony. And it feels kind of like the scenes like when he's driving down the road and he has all those tabletop pieces in the back of his convertible. Moments like that seem like something that would be right out of Matt Fraction's Run back in the day. I love that about it. I really do. I think Iron Man 2 is cool in that respect. I feel like, even though I like Mickey Rourke in the movie and I like Whiplash in the film, I like Justin Hammer, I don't think Justin Hammer or Whiplash, from my exposure in the comics, the very little I have of both of those characters, are very well portrayed, which may be why a reason that a lot of people hate that. That can argue into this argument I'm bringing up with this video of about a lot of these movies not having the reverence for these things that they're even based on, you know? And then the obvious pick, Iron Man 3. Iron Man 3 is such a ridiculously rough movie that I still can't stand to this day. I love Robert Downey Jr. I like Don Cheadle a lot. They're fun in that film. I kind of like how it has this, because Shane Black directed it, Lethal Weapon buddy cop movie feel. That's really good in that movie. But by the time, like, the middle of the film happens, like, with the house blowing up and stuff, dude, it loses me so bad. Like, I don't like that movie almost at all. Now, to be fair, it's better than, like, the majority of recent Marvel that's come out in recent years. For many of the companies, Disney, Sony, any of them. But, dude, I don't know. You know? It's pretty rough. But even, like, some of the films, like the Venom movies, for example, I really love and like, even though it's flawed, the first movie of Venom with Tom Hardy. I really do. But Let There Be Carnage and whatever, Save the Last Dance or whatever, The Last Dance, whatever the stupid-ass movie is called, those two are unwatchable. I mean, they're truly awful. They're worse than a lot of the bad superhero films we used to get back in the day from the early 2000s. To me, there's a lack of reverence in a lot of these movies that come out. Not all of them. Obviously not all of them. I mean, even recent experience, like No Way Home, for example, I thought was excellent. Not really a fan of Homecoming and Far From Home especially, but No Way Home, I loved it. I loved everything they did there. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of stuff that makes the effort, like Multiverse of Madness. But I think a big chunk of this stuff just doesn't really recognize, because of the newer teams, because of the new creative teams in Marvel that show up here and there, behind the scenes, the people that you and I don't know about, the people who Kevin Feige pretends to be heavily involved with, you know, I assume at least, those creative teams changing that are then making things like what Daredevil Born Again used to be before they stopped production through most of like the 70% of the show they finished and then redid all of it, or the people who brought out like She-Hulk. Or, you know, in Multiverse of Madness, you had America Chavez, for example. America Chavez is one that's, and same thing with Miss Marvel that I brought up earlier, not Captain Marvel. Those two are the weirdest thing to talk about. So Miss Marvel is based on a newer character from, 15 years ago? Something like that. The character from the movies and the show and whatever, she doesn't even have the same powers as Miss Marvel and all of the shit that they've shoved her into in recent years. Her entire persona as a character was based on her religion. Not in a way like Daredevil was. That's it with her. And that was what kind of made her not as fun. Every time she ever shows up in anything, it's this awe about, I've always wanted to meet Spider-Man, and it's like, so? What's the point of you? Every character that's young in the comics you could do this with. It's wasted, you know? But even when they adapted her into her show and movies and stuff, and I don't know if they ever corrected this at all, she just has like, you know, big, you know, spirit hands and shit. So it's not even like her stretching and changing her body and stuff like she does in the comics. So that adaptation, and America Chavez too, from what I understand, being able to accidentally jump from dimension to dimension, they were included in newer Marvel MCU projects just to be there, you know? Just to be there for representation and inclusivity and whatever the fuck we're doing nowadays with these movies. But the biggest thing that bothers me the most is that for the people who were actually the very small minority of people out there who gave a shit about America Chavez or Miss Marvel, who collectively, those two still have less fans than the people who like Captain Marvel, for example, whether it be Brie Larson or the comic version. People that cared about America Chavez and Miss Marvel still did not get an adaptation, and never probably will, of those two characters the way they are in the comics. there was no Reverence for even those fans who gave a shit. Those very few, like 1% of the whole comic community who gave a shit, they didn't even get their adaptation of those characters, and now they're still being thrown in our faces. Have they even brought America Chavez back, like, at all? I have a feeling they're going to do something with her in this new Avengers thing, whatever this phase is now, with Robert Downey Jr. being Doctor Doom and all of that. But anyway, I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are on all this, especially the stuff with like America Chavez and Miss Marvel. Do you think that post-Endgame, that we have a lack of reverence for these, a majority of the characters over the years? These movies do anyway. I mean, you look at Thor, there's gotta be better Thor stories out there. Even though I'm not a hardcore fan, there has to be better stuff that they could do per each movie. I mean, you look at the original film, it's basically the equivalent of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe movie with Dolph Lundgren. And I'm like, why are we doing that? You know? But I liked it in hindsight when it came out. I haven't rewatched it in like 10 years, but I need to at some point. I still own it. But Dark World? Fucking bad, man. Ragnarok? Not a big fan of. It's okay. It's got its moments. It's probably better than Dark World for me, but I don't know how much I feel that way either, to be honest. It went too goofy. And then you had Love and Thunder, and it's shockingly the worst of all of them. You know, it's probably one of the worst of the recent years, matter of fact, and that hasn't been hard to do at all. But what happened with the respect for Thor? Why is Thor a fucking goofball? I know Chris Hemsworth is good as both roles, serious and goofy, especially when he's doing comedy roles. I love him in stuff that he's in, comedian-wise, comedy-wise, whatever. But outside of that, like, why is Thor nothing but a goofball most of the time? Why are we not doing something more serious with him? I just read Fear Itself, the event from like 2010, 2011. And what they do with Thor there, he's a very direct, serious character like I've always known him to be. Before the Avengers 2012, when they made him just a Joss Whedon mouthpiece like every other character in here, where they're all talking like Tony Stark all the time. But before that, I really liked Thor in that kind of no-joke attitude that he had, you know, even amongst his friends in Asgard. We don't even have that. And the excuse is always, well, he grew out of that. Well, when the fuck did he grow up out of that? I haven't seen any evidence that he just all of a sudden started to turn into a more lighthearted person. If we had had Jane in most of the movies, well, that would make sense. It's not the case. You know, she vanished for a little while. So anyway, not in love with a lot of the movies and what they're doing. I'm hoping the people like Heath, who inspire the video here, are right about First Steps doing that. I've heard it a lot. I haven't known anything about Fantastic Four, but I've heard First Steps is a good movie. I've heard it really has this love for not only those characters, not only those comics, but also Marvel. True Marvel, which is weird to me, with Pedro Pascal being there and the weird version of the Thor and Johnny Storm they did here. But, you know, that's another argument for another day. Maybe I'll feel different when I see the movie. But there hasn't been a whole lot of this reverence, and we need it, I guess is my point. Anyway, what are your examples one way or another? Let me know what you think down below. What characters are you a fan of that may have gotten a TV show or a movie adaptation that you feel kind of slated over? Another good example is the Hulk. We haven't really had a great Thor or a great Hulk movie. I love, you know, the Incredible Hulk. I thought Eric Bana was good, not in a good movie though. And I'm a fan of other stuff, like the animated series from the 90s, and I like the Bill Bixby show because I grew up on it. But outside of that, like what we do with Hulk now, fuck. Anyway, thank you guys. God bless you all. Catch you later, and goodbye.